that beautiful, artisanal, five-star taco you're about to devour. What if I told you its entire family tree is rooted in filth, grime, and a truck so notoriously disgusting it earned the nickname, the Roach Coach? Yep, the story of the food truck isn't a clean, shiny Instagram post. It's a wild, 2,000-year-old journey from ancient Roman snack bars that served the city's poorest citizens, to the cowboys who survived on whistleberries and coffee thick enough to float a horseshoe, all the way to a global multi-billion-dollar culinary movement that was born from one of the worst financial crashes in modern history. Stick around, and we'll uncover how a disgraced chef, a drunken idea, and the invention of Twitter accidentally turned the Roach Coach into a rock star. See, in the 60s and 70s, these trucks, sometimes called gut trucks, served workers at gritty construction sites places with no other food options. With little competition, some vendors let standards slip, and the name, Roach Coach, stuck. But here's the twist. That greasy reputation was a total historical accident. The food truck's true ancestor was actually a brilliant solution to a massive urban problem. And to find it, we have to go back 2,000 years, to a city where most people didn't even have a kitchen. Welcome to the history of, where we dig into the surprising stories behind everyday things. This is ancient Rome, and for the vast majority of its urban citizens, this was the only kitchen they had. Most people lived in crowded apartment blocks called insulae, which had no space for cooking. So if you wanted a hot meal, you went here, to a thermopolium, which literally means a place where hot things are sold. These were the world's first fast food joints. The design was ingenious, an L-shaped counter with deep terracotta jars, called dullia, sunk into the masonry. These jars would be filled with hot stews, soups, and mulled wine, keeping them warm for customers all day. We know exactly what they served thanks to the ruins of Pompeii. In 2019, archaeologists unearthed the stunningly preserved thermopolium. Inside the jars, they found traces of a rich and varied menu. Duck, pork, goat, fish, and even land snails, all cooked together in a kind of ancient Roman paella. The frescoes on the counter acted as advertisements, and one even included a picture of a leashed dog, a not-so-subtle reminder for patrons to tie up their pets before ordering. The Romans had perfected street food for a dense urban world. So why did this brilliant idea completely disappear for over 1,500 years? The answer wouldn't reappear until a new empire rose not of marble and legions, but of dust, cattle, and a very stubborn Texan. Meet Charles Goodnight, the father of the Texas Panhandle. In 1866, Goodnight faced a logistical nightmare. He needed to drive thousands of cattle for months at a time across a vast, empty wilderness to markets in the north. His cowboys were tough, but they couldn't survive on what they could carry in their saddlebags. He needed a kitchen that could move with them. He needed a lifeline. So he invented one. Goodnight took a sturdy, surplus Studebaker army wagon and modified it, creating the first ever chuckwagon. The key innovation was the chuck box mounted on the back of portable pantry with shelves and drawers for kitchenware and ingredients. Its hinged lid dropped down to create a cook's workstation. The menu was simple and built to last. Dried beans, salted meats, cornmeal, and gallons of strong coffee. Fresh meat was a luxury, only available if an animal was injured on the trail and had to be put down. The man who ran this kitchen, the cookie, was the heart of the entire operation, second in command only to the trail boss. He was often the crew's doctor, barber, banker, and dentist, all rolled into one. And here we see how two parallel ideas were born from completely opposite problems. The Roman thermopolium was created to feed a dense urban population that lacked private space. The chuckwagon was invented to feed a sparse, mobile population in a vast, empty landscape. The modern food truck wouldn't be born until these two opposing forces, the crowded city and the lonely frontier, finally collided. As the 19th century ended, America's cities were exploding. The chuckwagon's mobility was brought from the prairie to the pavement. In 1872, a man named Walter Scott parked a covered wagon in front of a newspaper office in Providence, Rhode Island, selling pies and coffee to hungry, hurried journalists. This idea evolved into horse-drawn night owl lunch wagons, which became fixtures in cities like Detroit. They served nighttime workers long after traditional restaurants had closed, attracting everyone from factory hands and policemen to a young, ambitious engineer named Henry Ford. But the first vehicle we would truly recognize as a modern, branded food truck was this glorious 13-foot-long hot dog on wheels. In 1936, Oscar Mayer rolled out the Wienermobile, a marketing masterpiece that toured the country and became a national icon. It was part of a golden age of bizarre food vehicles, proving that meals on wheels could be fun, eye-catching, and downright weird. The mid-20th century, however, is where the food truck's identity split in two. On one side, you had a symbol of pure, wholesome joy, the Good Humor ice cream truck. The company's founder, Harry Burt, knew that street food had a bad reputation for being unsanitary. To fight this, he made his trucks sparkling white, and his drivers wore immaculate, hospital-clean uniforms. It was a brilliant marketing move. It screamed safe, clean, and delicious, making Good Humor a beloved fixture of American summers. But on the other side of the tracks, a different kind of food truck was emerging. After World War II, resourceful entrepreneurs converted surplus military vehicles into mobile canteens. They served blue-collar workers at construction sites and factories, places where they were the only option. But this lack of competition had a downside. With no incentive to impress, sanitation standards at some trucks plummeted. They gained a reputation for being dirty, greasy, and a haven for pests. And so, the roach coach was born. For the next 50 years, this was the status quo. Food trucks were either for kids' birthday parties or for grabbing a questionable burger on a job site. The two worlds never mixed. So what could possibly happen to fuse the gourmet potential of a restaurant with the gritty mobility of a roach coach? A global economic meltdown. The year is 2008. The Great Recession hits the global economy like a sledgehammer. The restaurant industry is decimated. Talented, fine dining chefs are laid off with nowhere to go. One of them is Roy Choi, a graduate of the prestigious Culinary Institute of America. Choi is classically trained, ambitious, and now unemployed. At the same time, a new technology is quietly taking over the world. A little blue bird is teaching people to share their every thought in 140 characters or less. The pieces were on the board for a revolution. No one saw it coming. The spark came from a man named Mark Mangera. One drunken night, while eating Mexican food, he had a moment of clarity. Los Angeles was filled with both Korean and Mexican communities. Why had no one ever thought to put delicious Korean BBQ inside a taco? He pitched the idea to his friend, Roy Choi. With the recession making a brick-and-mortar restaurant impossible, they scraped together enough money to rent a beat-up catering truck. They perfected their signature dish, Korean barbecued short ribs packed into a corn tortilla with a cilantro onion lime relish and a fiery salsa roja. They called it Kogi, and for the first few weeks, it was a complete failure. They'd park on a corner, and nobody would show up. They were desperate. So they started giving free samples to nightclub bouncers and local food bloggers. The word started to trickle out. And then they embraced the little blue bird. They started using Twitter. But they didn't just use it for advertising. They used it as a real-time beacon, a treasure map. They would tweet their location just before arriving, and suddenly the hunt was on. Newsweek would later call it America's first viral eatery, and it exploded. Lines of 300, 500, Even 800 people would form within minutes of a tweet. Kogi wasn't just selling food anymore. It was creating an event, a spontaneous mobile block party. The Los Angeles Times wrote that the truck became a roving party, bringing people to neighborhoods they might not normally go to and allowing for interactions with strangers they might not otherwise talk to. By making their location a secret to be discovered, they gamified the act of dining out. They weaponized the fear of missing out. This was the genius of Kogi. It wasn't just the food. It was the thrill of the chase. The Kogi phenomenon unleashed a tidal wave. Chefs across the country saw a path to owning their own business without the crushing debt of a traditional restaurant. But this boom sparked a war. Brick-and-mortar restaurant owners, already struggling from the recession, saw the trucks as unfair competition, claiming they were stealing their customers and revenue. It was a conflict that echoed the past, as established businesses once again lobbied to get their mobile competitors off the streets, just as they had a century earlier when they called them the pushcart evil. Cities responded with a dizzying maze of protectionist regulations. Chicago banned trucks from cooking on board for years, and later prohibited them from parking within 200 feet of any restaurant, effectively eliminating the entire downtown area. Louisville, Kentucky, created a 150-foot no-vending zone around restaurants selling similar food, which required getting permission from your direct competitor to operate. It was a legal and political battleground, forcing food truck owners to organize and fight for the right to earn a living. But despite the pushback, the revolution was unstoppable. The food truck had been reborn as a vital part of modern urban culture. It became a canvas for culinary creativity, a place where chefs could experiment with wild fusion concepts without fear of failure. Korean-Mexican tacos, Japanese-Peruvian skewers, Irish-Aryan mashups. The streets became a laboratory for flavor. More importantly, food trucks leveled the playing field. They became a low-cost entry point for a new generation of entrepreneurs, especially for immigrants who could share their cultural heritage one dish at a time. They are, as one urbanist put it, magical urbanism on four wheels, creating pop-up community hubs that bring people together. They are a microcosm of the modern city itself, diverse, creative, and constantly on the move. So the food truck isn't just a kitchen on wheels. It's a 2,000-year-old story of innovation, born from two opposite needs: feeding the crowded city and surviving the lonely frontier. It's a story of reputation, from the trusted cookie of the Wild West to the dreaded roach coach of the industrial age. And ultimately, it's a story of redemption, where a recession and a revolution in technology allowed a forgotten industry to reclaim the streets and become a symbol of creativity, community, and culture. So the next time you chase down your favorite truck, remember, you're not just buying lunch. You're taking part in a history that stretches from the fall of Rome to the Wild West. A history that proves that sometimes the most exciting ideas don't come from a boardroom. They come from the street. What's the best thing you've ever eaten from a food truck? Let us know in the comments below. And for more surprising histories, make sure you subscribe to The History Off and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.